I guess you can start. Huh?
Yeah, welcome everyone. Looks like we have a few more people in the waiting room, so we'll get started as soon as we see those folks enter. Art and I are excited to have you all here. And we wanted to let you know that as soon as we finish our session part, our talking at you, we're going to have an opportunity to answer any questions you have. So we'll wait just a little bit longer.
Yeah, there are more people coming in.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling this morning? Feeling good, Karen?
Yeah. It's morning for us. It may not be morning for the folks who are joining us. I'm in Utah on Mountain Time, and so 6 a.m. for me.
8 a.m. for me. I'm on the East Coast in Connecticut. So
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and start so that we have plenty of time for questions, since this is a super short speed session. 9 p.m. in China. Welcome. Thanks for staying up for us. 3 p.m. in Cyprus. Love this. Love that people are all over the world. Thanks again for joining us. My name is Karen Neitzel. I've been with Carney, Sandoe as a search consultant since 2018. Prior to that, I was a high school social studies and math teacher. Yes, a very strange combination, and worked in both public and independent schools. My last stint in independent school was at the Iolani School on Oahu, where I was associate head of school, K-12 Episcopal School, 2,000 students. And I am thrilled to be part of the international practice with Carney Sandoe. I'm an alum of the International School of Brussels, and am actually partnering with them right now on their elementary school head search. So pretty exciting to be working with my alma mater on a search for the first time. And I'm going to pass it off to Art.
hi, my name is Art Charles. I have worked in 5 international schools in India, Switzerland, Ecuador, Bulgaria, and the last one was in Beirut, Lebanon, as well as 3 independent schools. Been with Carney Sandoe for 14 years now, and have done more than 160 senior leadership searches, mostly with international schools, but some independent in the US. Karen?
Yes, so we decided to put the session together because, as you can imagine, we have read thousands of resumes and letters of interest. In the process of doing, we figured out over 250 combined searches. And so we have a good idea of what resonates with a search committee when they look at your resume. And we often give feedback individually to candidates when we're working with them, but this gives us an opportunity to give more people feedback at one time, or suggestions, I should say. So we are really going to focus on some key things that we think you could do to have your letter and your resume stand out to the folks that are going to be reading it. So not just us, but the search committee for the schools that you're applying to. And I'm going to pass it off to Art.
So you should know that as part of the search process, when we're doing a search for an administrative position, for candidates, we present a 6-part dossier to the school. Now, the dossier consists of 4 documents that the candidate presents: the resume, the letter of interest, we're going to talk about them today, a statement of educational or leadership philosophy, and a list of professional references. Now, to those 4 documents, we add a transcript of the interview we have with the candidate, and the questions are based mostly on the qualities and qualifications that are found in the position description. And we also write a 1 or 2 page profile about the candidate, explaining why we find him or her to be a good fit for the position. Karen?
Now that's, as you can imagine, that's a lot of documents. And the folks that are most likely reading your materials are volunteers, right? So for head of school jobs, particularly, those folks are usually board members, volunteers, and who have regular jobs on top of being a board representative and don't have as much time to read through documents as perhaps others. And so it's really important to make sure that the documents you put together stand out to them, specifically related to the position that you're applying to. And so, right, the first part of every search is you send your materials in. And then the second part, the search committee looks at your materials and decides who they're going to interview, usually by Zoom, as a semifinalist. And so we want you to be in that group that gets interviewed as a semifinalist, so that they're not just looking at you as pieces of paper, right? They get to see who you are and hear your voice directly from you.
So here's some suggestions. I'll talk about suggestions for the resume, and Karen will talk about suggestions for the letter of interest. So starting with the resume. The purpose of the resume is to make the search committee want to learn more about you, as Karen said, so they'll want to talk with you via a Zoom interview as a semifinalist. So now I've looked at thousands of resumes, and I've come up with what I call the 20-second rule. That's how much time, 20 seconds, you have for a reader to be convinced that they want to continue reading your resume in order to learn more about you and to continue looking at your other materials. So think about that from the reader's point of view. Is my resume going to capture their interest within 20 seconds? I'm a bit old-fashioned. You can look at me. And so the thoughts I'm giving you are my thoughts regarding what a successful candidate's resume looks like. Forgive me if some of these these suggestions seem obvious, but we see examples of problems every day with resumes. So here's a typical scenario. We've announced a search for, let's say, the secondary principal of XYZ Academy, and two candidates on a given day, John Smith and Mary Jones, send us emails with attached resumes. Now, that's a good start, because we've seen some resumes where somebody says, check out my resume on Google Docs or on LinkedIn, or they tell us, my resume is with Search Associates. It doesn't work very well since we don't work with Search Associates, and you don't want to ask us to do additional work to find your resume. But with these two candidates, with John and Mary, they've attached their resumes to the email. That's great. I download the files. John's file is labeled resume. Mary's file is labeled my resume. Can you already imagine the problem I'm having, especially before I've had my second cup of coffee? So here's what I'm going to suggest. When you attach your resume to an email, label the resume this way: your last name, comma, your first name, an underline, and then resume. So Smith, comma, Mary, underline, resume. And that will ensure that your resume gets put in the proper matrix and file. Okay, so first, labeling the resume file. Now, what about the substance of the resume? In terms of length, I would suggest no more than 2 to 3 pages. I once got a resume that was 26 pages long for a job. The person did not get the job. But these 2 to 3 pages fill up the 2 or 3 pages from top to bottom, left to right. Don't send us a 2 1/4 page resume. It looks like you left something out. If it's 2 1/4 page, shrink it to 2 by playing around with a font. So no half-quarter pages, nor having too much blank space. You can adjust the margins, you can adjust the font size if necessary, but keep it to 2 to 3 pages. In terms of layout, at the very top, put your name and your contact information, your email, your phone number, where you're located. You don't need to write at the top resume. It's obvious that it's a resume. So your name and contact information. If the search committee can't see how to contact you, they won't. And believe me, I've gotten resumes with no contact information. Next, and this is my opinion, put your employment history, beginning with your most recent job. For example, head of secondary school, 2018 to present. Don't write 2018 to 2022 or 2023, because the assumption will be that you're leaving at that particular point. Or if you put 2022, then the assumption is you left last July. After that, indicate the school, its location, the grade range, and the number of students. So head of secondary school, 2018 to present, XYZ Academy, Zurich, Switzerland, pre-K to grade 12, 750 students, IB diploma program, and Swiss Matura. That gives them an idea of where you're working, the size of school, the grade range, and what curricular programs you're familiar with. Then here's the most important thing. Tell them what you've done or what you're doing using strong verbs with bullet points. I led the self-study process for accreditation, or I supervised the travel program for the senior class, or I initiated a peer review process for the faculty professional growth program. So tell them what you've done or what you're doing with strong verbs, and use more space for your more recent positions, what you're doing now, or what you've done most recently. Then list your publications and presentations, because these are things that you've done. They show you as an active participant in either presenting at a conference or writing for a journal for TIE Online. Next, you can put your professional development activities, but I would suggest you keep these brief, because basically that you're going to a conference or a hotel and sitting in a chair and listening to somebody else. And I've seen resumes that will devote half a page to conferences people are attending and a lot less space to 20 years of employment history. So giving more to what you've done than conferences that you've attended. Then your education, your most recent degrees first, and then finish up your resume with something personal. Your marital status, your family, ages of your kids, languages that you speak, and some personal interest. And the reason for that is you want them to see you as a human being. It's going to be very helpful for breaking the ice when it comes to a Zoom interview. And for example, Mary, I see you're a biker. Do you ride road bikes or mountain bikes? Tell me about some rides. Or John, you're an avid reader. What are you currently reading? It helps break the ice. Leave out this, in my opinion. Leave out the multicolored logos, the banners, the arrows, the personal skill sets at the top, because everybody lists the same ones. I'm collaborative, I'm passionate, I'm a team builder. Leave out the testimonials. I've never seen a bad one like Art Charles, really good. After the second year, he caught on to what the job was all about. And he did very well after that. And put your personal referees with contact different info on a separate page. I hope these comments have been helpful. Now, Karen's going to talk about the letter of interest.
Right. And our colleague, Julie, is collecting questions, if any are coming up in the chat, and we'll address those after I cover a bit about your letter. And so really important, it's much easier as a candidate to have one standard letter that you use for all schools. The downside of that is schools can tell that it's not specifically for them. So it's really important to look at the requirements for the job. We use position descriptions, right? And in those position descriptions, you'll find out about the school's mission. You'll see desired traits or characteristics of the candidates and opportunities and challenges. Other firms might use a different format, but essentially you want your letter to tell the story to whomever's reading it of why you are the right candidate for this particular job at this particular school. So you need to be specific to address the mission, that you're mission aligned with the school. So if you have a strong IB background and the school has been using an American curriculum, you might not be the best fit from their perspective unless you have experience with US-based curriculum. So really important that you're mission aligned. Also, right, if it's a school that has a faith basis to it, your letter should ensure that it explains that you are aligned with that faith. So again, really important to make sure that the letter tells the story of how you meet the requirements and are mission aligned. And you can use specific examples, right? You're not repeating what's on your resume. They can see your resume separately. So this is a different opportunity to showcase your experience and talents. And so you can give some stories about what you've done that maybe aligns with an opportunity or challenge they have. So maybe we are addressing enrollment management at our school post-COVID. And you could have an example of how you yourself have worked with families and enrollment challenges and done marketing or whatever it is that would align with what they're asking. And make sure, and also sometimes we get letters and they're addressed to, Karen and Art or Dear Carney Sandoe. It helps to take the time to go to the school site and see who, if it's a senior admin position, see who the head of school is, and you can address it to the head of school. If it's a head of school position, you can address it to the head of school search committee, right? Because you're not going to know exactly who the search chair is, possibly. But those are some points on the letter. Not more than 2 pages, right? I've seen 6-page letters, and unfortunately, it may have everything that's relevant to the job, but folks have limited time and they're not going to get to the 6th page. So 2 pages, and again, really, really specific to the school. And there can be sections in your letter that highlight accomplishments that you use in lots of different letters, but you just have to make sure it's appropriate for the school that you're applying for. And so that's our presentation. We're fast, 20 minutes about. And so we did that intentionally so we could answer any questions that you might have. And I think Julie is going to filter those to us.
Thanks, Karen and Art.
Yeah.
I'll give folks a chance to pop some questions in the chat, or if folks want to unmute themselves, we welcome that as well. But I do have a question for the 2 of you from someone who registered and sent in a question prior to the session beginning. What are your thoughts on digital interactive resumes with links and things like that? Does that help candidates stand out?
Yeah, the challenge with the links are people might be looking at resumes and not have good internet access. So really important to have the most important details, significant details on the resume that are not hot linked somewhere else. And you could have a separate, there's people who resumes, like they have their LinkedIn, and then you can click on the LinkedIn link and it goes to their profile, which is great. Or if it links to something else, but the resume itself should be mostly readable as a paper document.
Your resume doesn't change. Just keep that in mind. It's the letter that changes. And you always want to put yourself in other people's shoes. How is this going to appear? We suggest, I think, as Karen mentioned, that you read your letter aloud. Did you have somebody else, a colleague or a spouse, listen to your letter, and have somebody else look at your resume too? Make sure that there are no typos there, that it makes sense. But resume stays the same, letter changes according to the job. I'm seeing, we anticipated this one, photo or no photo on the resume. The one thing I will say is if you use a photo, you don't need to use it both on your resume and your letter. And I've seen some of those. So Karen, do you want to talk about the photo? What's your feeling?
Yeah, it's a personal preference. And just pay attention to the job posting. Some schools are listing specifically like to have no identifying photos or links that would perhaps present opportunities for bias on their side. And so just if a school specifically says, no personal information that would suggest bias, then definitely do not have a picture. It's nice to have, if you like having your picture on your resume, it's your document. So really personal preference, but just be mindful of what the schools are looking at. And so it's a good idea to maybe have both set up just in case you're applying to school that specifically doesn't want photos.
And I've seen a resume where the photo and the name took up an entire page. No, just shrink it to an appropriate size and make sure it looks professional. Have somebody else look at it and say, do I look professional and friendly? I think that's the best we can suggest.
Thank you both. Lots of questions in the chat. I'll start from the top. Could you comment again about putting your education, your degrees near the end? Why not before? This person says that's the previous advice they have received. So they were just curious if you could elaborate a bit.
That's my particular bias. I'm thinking about it from both the consultant's point of view and the school's point of view. I think I want to see what you're doing now and what you've done previously. Then you can put the education after it. But I really want to know if you're ready to step up to this next position. If you've taken on the responsibilities and are doing it, then I don't really care whether you have the doctorate or not. I'll find out. I want to see what you're doing now. But that's my
question. Sorry, Art. This next question is related to cover letters. Can you put section headers in a cover letter to make it succinct and easier to find key sections, skills, or examples?
Karen?
Yeah, you could if it reads easily that way. I haven't seen that happen very often. And I like reading a cover letter as a story. So having subcategories in there or subheaders, I think would make it choppier from my perspective. And it would make it seem like maybe the cover letter is too long if you have to have the subheaders in there. It's hard for me to know without seeing it and reading it.
I'd agree. The other thing is, in a letter, don't ever use words like although or however. Although I have no experience with fundraising and you're looking for a fundraiser, if you haven't done it, don't try to cover up. Just tell them what you're good at and what they'll get if they get you. Because Karen and I will tell you that when you see the list of desired qualities and qualifications, no candidate checks all the boxes. And we tell that to the search committee. So tell them what you're really strong at, what floats your boat, and then let them decide if you're a good fit. But make the case for why you are a good fit in the letter.
This next one is about resume layout. Where should a person put accreditation and authorization visits? Should that be in the PD section, the publications and presentation section, or in a different section?
Well, you can have a section that has accomplishments that would include that. as well as presentations and publications. If you're, for example, if you're at your current school, you could say, I'm leading the self-study for reaccreditation. I would definitely put that in there. If you've done it at 5 schools, you can either put it in the most recent school or put it under accomplishments.
Okay, great, thank you. This next one I'm going to read, it's a bit lengthy. Thank you for the insight. I had my resume organized by listing my leadership experiences. I apply for head of school / superintendent positions, and then I list accomplishments in categories: instructional leadership, community relations, resource management, and 21st century leadership. I do that because my accomplishments overlap across positions. Is that a bad way to go?
I'll handle that. No, I don't think so. I remember these are just my suggestions, and I'm coming from, again, from the point of view of search committees looking at this. They want to know what you're doing now. I think it's fine to put in there other accomplishments and you know, what you've done, and you can put those in categories, but let them know what you're doing now and in previous jobs.
What are your thoughts on the use of color on resumes? How do design elements impact a search committee?
And I'm old-fashioned. I just do it black and white, but it's a personal preference. I just, you don't want anything that's going to be distracting. Okay, make good use of those 2 or 3 pages. Pack them with information and not with things. I've seen logos of schools that people worked at. What purpose? Arrows, timelines, follow this curving timeline. It's just distracting. What they want to know is what you've accomplished.
I think that's it in terms of questions. I know we have about 2 minutes left. We'll give folks another chance to see if there's anything last minute.
Well, thanks for joining us. We hope this has been helpful.
Yeah, nice to see a lot of familiar names that I ran into at Aircos.
Yeah, I recognize
Thanks
a lot
for
of
coming.
names. Thank you.
All right. I think we have 1 minute left.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Julie.
Yes, thanks,
Appreciate
Julie.
you organizing this for us.
5 a.m. for Julie on the West Coast.
Yeah. God bless. In particular, for handling the mechanics of it, because I couldn't have done that.
My pleasure. Oh, here, I do have another last minute question.
Okay.
How much teaching experience / accomplishments should candidates for leadership positions add on their resume?
I think if you're applying for a division head role, teachers who are on the search committee like to see what you've taught, right?
Yep.
So once you get to head of school, not as important, but certainly for division leadership role, I would definitely have teaching experience, and you can have just titles. If it's, 20 years ago, I was an elementary teacher, taught PYP, and stuff. And as already mentioned, when something's more recent, have more detail.
Yeah.
But yes, definitely.
I wouldn't leave it off. No, I wouldn't leave it off. I think it's important. Just don't need to give it as much room. The common sense is you give more room to the more recent positions. And just don't give half a page to conferences you've attended and a quarter page to your entire employment history. That doesn't make sense. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Art.